Hello, everyone. This is Brian Beamish, aka the Rational Investor. It is where are we here? Sunday, September 24th, 2017. I thought just for fun, we did a real long broiler chicken show for the site this afternoon. But I actually didn't get to look at this chart with our audience, so I thought actually as a sort of an aside, I was going to do up just a little commentary on our good old stamp daily chart and throw it on the site for peeps to check out over the coming days. But also in the public, if you find any value in this information, consider it a fun little, you know I don't know, piece. Have fun with it. We've been watching this Bitcoin sort of sideways dish. I don't know what you would call it. Slice of a parabola, kind of arc price action for a while. And I've been musing about whether this $2,500 was some sort of kind of psychological midpoint pivot of this arc. And considering our cycle analysis, done a bunch of lower time frame charts that we talked about in videos today. Kind of thinking right now, this is really very correctionally, kind of like all of these patterns, feeling very correction-y. And actually, it's really interesting, the sort of the talk, the scuttlebutt, if you will, in the public. I'm actually encouraged by that because if anything, we got a little bit frothy there. Had some interesting interactions with the public back in the spring there, and Brian's mouth runs away from him. But there was no doubt about it. You could totally feel that the public was coming in on some of these stories, and it was getting a little silly. So if anything, actually, I think it was very healthy that price sort of goes through this cleanup process. The question really I have is, do we hold this sort of sauce or sort of thesis heading into what I would consider a very significant psychological and actually demographic, like really long-term, hugely pivot events. And the next couple of years are just going to be, from a sort of a human history perspective, we'll look back on it and we'll really only see it maybe like 5-10 years from now. But I totally am convinced that we're going through a cycle pivot here. So, half of Bitcoin's price action itself is actually totally explainable given the cycle itself. But interestingly enough, the top that did come in, I actually felt like it didn't feel like a top, like a blow off top. What I actually find interesting with Bitcoin is it can't really finish a move without just some horrendous orgy of activity. And I even remember when we were going through sort of correction periods, 2015, trying to establish a new bull, we would just have, percentage-wise, just insane blow-off tops that sort of marked the end of that move. And I don't know, this didn't feel like an end of a bull. It still feels like it's a bull. It just got a little too ahead of itself and it needed some time to clean up. That's sort of my thesis. We have done some technical damage here over the short term, and so as a result, I do have to question whether my ARC thesis is going to hold in here. But I do find it fascinating that price itself, as you can see right in the short term, there is some validity to this ARC thesis. Obviously, the market is keying off of these levels. Something's going on here. And it's interesting in our site, therationalinvestor.co, if you are ever interested, fun community. I mean, we got like 400 or 500 members all running around the site having a blast. We actually have a really sort of raging debate right now. This is actually off the, if we actually drill down to 4-hour kind of thing, this is a really interesting level here on the charts. And I think, just the general thesis I'm going to hold right now is if we do lose this level in here, then it means that our ARC sort of thesis, this sort of timeline that I've been sort of marching on for the past little while, it's probably a suspect. And if anything, I think what probably happens here is you can see 30 SMA, if we can resolve up through the top here, and it's Sunday evening, you never know what the hell's going to happen. Asian sessions probably got about another 2-3 hours to go, and nobody crapped on Bitcoin here right now. The Europeans are going to be waking up soon, and they're probably going to be getting ready for their business day, so we'll see what's on their mind. And if this thing does resolve back bullishly, then I think, we got a shot. But I think also, too, 30 SMAs probably in this high here that I've noted, 41.2270, that's probably going to be a fairly stiff battle point going forward here anyway. If anything, I would make the argument that if we can resolve bullishly, this is probably going to do like an A, B, C, D kind of idea, and take us up into, reload short zone kind of idea above this sort of mini profile here. So, put it all together. Very interesting sort of, we're right on the precipice here of a further sort of pullback if we lose these levels. And I think also, too, we've been sort of bantering around. I don't have it on this chart, and I don't really want to edit this chart anymore. You can argue there's a megaphone pattern working here, and a loss of these levels is going to suggest that, hey, probably 200 SMA, a real test of this low, back against value high, fill in this very empty void in the profile, which is concerning unto itself. Test a 200 period moving average back down into actual key support. I think that argument's pretty solid. Off of higher time frames, and especially with this conversation about this arc, I do find something very interesting going on with on-balance volume. I think in the short term, you can see the bulls and bears, they're basically at war right now. There is a war on here. And really, it's just a question, really, ultimately, and hopefully as I'm sort of chit-chatting away, you can just read what's on the screen so you know what I'm going to be talking about next. But you can definitely see we're actually at an extremely important pivot point for on-balance volume here. Because if the bears, and again, that would basically imply the loss of this arc and these levels here, if the bears do continue to sort of be alive and we see some nice chunky red bars in here, that's going to break this OBV and, in essence, solidify this massive M, which, M's, as we know, are inherently not good, bullish signs. So we are right on edge here. And I thought that was really interesting today. I was a bit surprised. When I first eyeballed this, I was like, oh, yeah, we totally broken down. But actually, when you draw the level, you can see that the market is just basically sitting there waiting for somebody to blink. And you can see how low the volumes are. Obviously, we just started a new day, so there's not much to be inferred here. But even yesterday, Sunday volume, I mean, gee whiz, volume is just dried right up here, right at this key battle level here. So really, really interesting little zone. Probably traders, you want to make it nice and simple. Resolution through that high there, 37.6184, which would be a move above 13 EMA. That's going to give you a pop and a test of these highs. And if that breaks out, then woohoo, longs off that level, you're rocking and rolling. Stops against these lows here, right? So if we break out and then it craps out below this low, probably, and if we break this low here and that low there, 35.14 even, then you're going to go short off of that level there, and your stops are going to be just above that 13 EMA there, right? That'll actually act as a really, really nice barrier for your stops. So I can actually see a really cute little trade setup coming in here for those, nimble traders out there. Nice little range resolution here. And if you're lucky, and this thing actually gains some inertia, if this resolves bull and then we actually take out this high and a bunch of stops kick in, whatever, ding, 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 we might get a nice run back up top here and longs off this level, rock and roll. Conversely, if we lose this low here, we could easily tank easily, down. Wicks and tails like to be eaten in a test against value high there. That's pretty good risk reward. So very, very interesting little level. Maybe this is serendipitous that I did this sort of public video today, because the market is coming into a really, really interesting apex here. Momentum, in essence, I like to study momentum in two ways. I like to look at volume momentum, studying both the bars and indicators like OBV for sort of the momentum push, if you will. And as I said, super, super, super duper, ooper, snooper, rooper, cooper level here. I mean, this is ridiculously how important this level is here. And then I also like to study price momentum. And I actually use two different tools, because I like to use the MACD as sort of a raw momentum push. And it was interesting when we were publishing, the last time I published this chart, I had actually pointed out that we had a momentum crash, and the market had based here and come up a little bit. And I'd said, if we lose these levels, oh boy, look out. And it's interesting how that broke, which basically confirmed actually a nasty bearish divergence in this indicator right here. And then following it, we get a good old M, right? M's are inherently bearish signs. So, the interesting thing is price momentum. The raw momentum push, it broke, which kind of sucks. But if anything, great use of this tool as a measure of that. And then I like to use a heavily modified Williams percentage R indicator that I sort of built over the years, that I think is an excellent tool to sort of tell me if the market's overbought or oversold. And anytime the moving average gets into the overbought zone, that's not a good sign. Basically, it means that to me, cycle-wise, it takes a lot of momentum to push this moving average into the overbought zone. So to me, it just simply says we're very, very late on any kind of momentum push there was. And indeed, I think on balance, the worst part about it, and the way I used to use it when I was a broker, is I just simply say, if the market is stupidly overbought, then really it doesn't necessarily mean that this isn't a bull, but there's probably a better time to be a buyer, and just cool your jets. And sure enough, down we go. So, in the short term, we have this problem. And as I sort of pointed out here, the process of sort of cleaning up this mess is underway. I think there's an incredibly important just short-term battle going on here. And you can see there's a little bit of a very steep W working on the raw momentum indicator. I mean, if buyers can actually come in here and register a cute little W off of the OBV here and just, really ramp up the buying, give me a nice big green chunky bar here, and we can get a nice little W in the momentum oscillator. That's actually a little momentum signal that we actually like to track and follow. So, this is a really interesting level right here. I mean, really interesting. So I'm watching with bated breath. I will say, though, that, especially new people to investing, and you're sitting there going, yeah, but Bitcoin, let's try that again. Yeah, but I'm trying to do the cool voice, right? Because this is remember that guy back in the spring, bought a shitload of Bitcoins? Well, I can't even remember what the hell his name was. But anyway, so I'm trying to do his voice. Yeah, Brian, but I want to be a dude, and I want to buy Bitcoins when it's a good time to be, a good investor. I think that we're still sort of in that end of phase kind of environment here. I wouldn't be surprised if price, ironically enough, sitting at about $3,500. I think you could actually make a bet that Bitcoin could double from current levels and could be half from current levels. I think you can easily make that bet. And over the course of the next year, I think both bets could win. So, this is an extremely volatile asset. And so, somebody who actually wants to invest in Bitcoin, and especially people that are like, well, Brian, what I really want to do is I want to invest in this new, we have one site member that's just super jazzed about this one altcoin. Holy moly. And frankly speaking, I look at the price chart and it's absolutely perfect. So it makes perfect sense. And maybe you're going to use Bitcoin to try and get into this thing. Maybe don't go and shoot the entire wad if you're going to, or if you want to invest. Don't go and shoot the whole wad today. Traders, they're going to be obviously very obsessed about the short-term resolution of tight ranges like this. They're going to be hunting setups to either go long or short. Great. Let traders trade. And frankly speaking, I think we've already spoken to the traders. I think they, I just pull up their charts and it's pretty obvious short-term setups here. If anything, we'd call this like a narrow sideways channel, but that's, it's here nor there. Speaking more to investors, I think, a really good way to approach Bitcoin, to use it as sort of an investing vehicle to get into, alts and stuff like that, is you don't necessarily need to go and buy all your Bitcoin today. Maybe just go and actually create a plan where you're just going to simply say, look, I want to have, $5,000 working in the market, and I'm going to buy like 1/10 of my desired position over the next 3 months, right? So that means like once a week, you got to get in there, just buy 1/10 of your position, buy 1/10 of your position, buy 1/10 of your position. And what ends up happening, and this is such an old cliche broker line, but it's just simply called dollar cost averaging. And what you're really trying to do is trying to negate all this short-term price fluctuation. And, Bitcoin and crypto, by definition, it is an extremely volatile asset. And we have to expect that, guys. I mean, this is part of the game. For those people that are hunting like value, real value, I actually thought, especially since I'm speaking to the broader universe, I frankly have no idea how many people are watching this. Mr. McAfee came on and had a big old rant on Twitter and business channels and stuff like that in reaction to Jamie Dimon sort of vilifying Bitcoin. Frankly speaking, for the audience, I think just the simple fact that Bitcoin's already gone through a major check through 2014, 2015, and it survived that. And what was really interesting is some of the richest people in the world, I know for a fact, started to get involved in Bitcoin at those levels. And when you did this sort of quote unquote cost of production sort of model, it turns out that, gee whiz, they were basically buying Bitcoins at what it costs to keep the network going. I don't think there's any difference in that logic today. And the interesting thing, I think it's really important for the public to understand this. In a weird sort of way, Bitcoin is almost like I hate to say it, I know I'm going to come back and eat these words, but because of the way Satoshi Nakamoto built the halvening, in essence, if you follow the cost of production thesis, the price of Bitcoin has to rise over time. It has no choice. So as a result, you may go and buy a whack of Bitcoin here at $3,000-$4,000. At some point down the road, the cost of production is going to make that price $3,000-$4,000. It really doesn't have any choice. And somebody in our lounge tonight said, yeah, well, Brian, there's only 31 more halvenings to go. And I said, gee whiz, I can't even count that high if you actually figured it out. Now, I do understand that's over a very, very, very long period of time. But this simple fact that I would make, and really what I saw happen over the course of 2013, 14, 15, 16, was basically a validation of this whole idea. Bitcoin's value is, and I talked to a lot of people on Twitter, a lot of the miners and stuff like that. They mine these cryptocurrencies, and then when the public goes crazy and bids these prices up, they're just like, wow, shaking my head. Can't believe it, Brian. I've even had a couple of them go, this is insanity. So, please understand what you're getting involved with here. So speaking to my original point, people who are like, hey, I want to buy value, right? I want to get it in on the cheap. Well, Mr. McAfee the other day came out and publicly said that his cost of production for a Bitcoin is $1,000. Frankly speaking, I think that number's a bit high. He is operating out of Washington State, if I understand correctly. So, maybe there's extra fees that he has to pay to operate out of there. I like the idea that the cost of production right now is somewhere around $500, with sort of like 300 being the low end and 600-700 being the high end. And it also wouldn't surprise me too, is Mr. McAfee going to go out and tell a business channel exactly what his break-even point is for his business model? I don't think that's in his best interest. So, if we use that premise and we look at our chart, that's the whole reason why I draw these fibs here in this big green box. This is what I would actually consider to be, sort of an acceptable buying zone. This is what we call the reload zone. And all I've done is just taken this fib off of the low end of the range here. And what I find really interesting, and drawn it off the top, and just this is the 61.8 to 78.6 fib. And I find that interesting how this green zone also happens to line up with a fairly large hole in the profile. My hunch is, I don't know whether this is the top. I've got a funny feeling because of the cycle, there's sort of like one more hurrah here. It wouldn't surprise me. I do believe that prices up in these levels are substantially above quote unquote value. And it is simply the function of the public coming in, being all super excited. I actually was quite shocked. I actually saw somebody that less than a year ago didn't know anything about this space. And I see that that actually not even, maybe even half a year ago. And now they're actually on Facebook and Twitter and stuff selling courses on how to invest in cryptocurrencies. And I was just like, holy criminy. I couldn't believe it when I saw that. So, all of the tells are there that, hey, this is getting a little nuts. Are we done? Well, only time will tell. I've yet to actually meet anybody who actually has a crystal ball that's even half decent accurate. And of course, if we could predict the future, we'd all be living on our yachts and not even bothering to do these videos. So, we're going to just basically trade our setups and obey the rules. And the rules, simply put, are if you want to invest and you're an investor in crypto, I'm just going to say it, maybe cool your jets. Let the fluff sort of die out. Maybe it means that you have to come back in a year or two. Usually recessions happen in years of that ends in 8s, 9s, 0s, 1s, 2s. It's very normal. So my advice for quote unquote investors is, let the kids have fun. Let the speculators speculate. The traders are going to trade. I wouldn't be surprised if there is some sort of insane blow off top here coming down the pike into this cycle peak. But, maybe just hold your money on the sidelines and just cool your jets and wait for, I like to teach all my beginner students. We actually, and it'd be really interesting to see if any of them even remember. What we really want to find when we want to invest in something is what we call weekly W's, right? So if we actually look at the Bitcoin chart, here's a great chart from Coinigy that I like to talk about. I won't really get into this too much here right now, but the irony of it all is our weekly W's on Bitcoin happened way back here. We're in, no doubt about it, we're in face rib mode and having lots of fun, don't get me wrong, but are we really anywhere near where investors should be investing their hard-earned money in Bitcoin story looking to make capital gains? That's a tough one, folks. And if anything, I kind of feel like it's probably good that I just go on record, the public understand that, yeah, we can trade. And I mean, there are setups. There is that channel that we talked about in the lounge today on our site. We're talking about bull bear battle lines, and we've got, targets and windows and all that. Have lots of fun doing that. But if you're just sitting there and you really don't know crypto and you're not really too familiar with it, please understand, this is my message to the public. Go slowly. This is extremely dangerous stuff and extremely volatile. So I hope what I've said here today has been of some aid. This chart has been on the screen here, so hopefully you've had lots of time to read my little notes. Take screenshot if you will. I think we might be doing the Coinigy shows down the road through the fall here. So maybe the next time you see one of those, you can pop into the Coinigy forum and ask me a question in person. Okay, sure hope that helps everybody. hopefully you have a pretty good idea of what Brian's seeing here at the moment, and hopefully maybe you have a better, clearer idea of what I'm seeing and what you should be looking for going forward. All right. Have yourselves a great evening, everyone. All the best, and bye for now.